Because I've been fairly busy lately, I hadn't noticed the new Doom Eternal trailer.
That's a big
mistake. That is what you were gonna say, right?
Now, I'm sure that some of you recall one of my previous videos about the official gameplay reveal demo, wherein I asserted that the guys at id Software might be a little more than just anti-PC. Sadly, that video was removed for hate speech, so before I comment on the new story trailer, allow me to recap my previous video in such a way that is hopefully considered kosher. The 2018 gameplay took place on Earth after a demonic invasion. As the Doomslayer navigated the ruins, a virtual guide made some amusing commentary that mirrored PC culture today. Now, before we run through the relevant segments again, I would like to highlight here that there are two main interpretations of the charged language. The first is that the hologram's speech is in fact pandering to anti-immigration sentiments and making fun of progressive language. The second is that it's actually making fun of how the UAC, an evil corporation, is co-opting progressive language in order to achieve its own sinister goals. In other words, id Software is making fun of corporations and not progressives. Thus, anyone who believes in open borders and any other sacred progressive cow can safely rest assured that their worldview has not been challenged in the public arena. Some of the proponents of this perspective have also contended that the demons in Doom are more of a force of nature than they are malicious actors with any agency. The real villains are the members of the UAC, who have attempted to colonize Hell and extract its resources.
We exploited Hell and its resources because it was in mankind's best interest to do so.
This perspective seems to echo that of the modern progressive attitude toward European colonialism. It makes me wonder if the next step is to blame the terrible conditions in Hell not on demon behavior, but rather on the UAC. Perhaps it is Earth's responsibility to take these demons in at this point and try to assimilate them to make up for any wrong committed against them. In any event, the problem with the notion that the demons are a force of nature absent any agency is that Olivia Pierce, one of the antagonists from the UAC, was corrupted by the demons and convinced to open a portal between their two worlds. The demons of Hell manipulated her for their own ends and eventually turned her into a giant spider mastermind. Now, even if the UAC's progressive language was nothing more than id Software taking a jab at corporate culture, then that might still say something about progressive language today. It might say that progressive language is being used by the powers that be to achieve aims that go against our best interests. And like a typical liberal white female, Olivia Pierce was manipulated for someone else's ends. So, with some preliminary topics addressed now, let's run through the hologram clips.
Please remain calm. You may notice a slight change in the environment. Fear not. It's all part of the plan.
Since the end of World War II, the West has undergone levels of migration unprecedented in human history. Crime rates have risen, and in some cases, the West is literally on fire. Yet our leaders insist that everything is going according to plan.
My brothers and sisters, let's help to make our friends transition into this world a comfortable one.
This plays on the absurdity of trying to cater to incoming cultures and peoples utterly hostile to you and your way of life. When a disproportionate amount of individuals from a particular part of the world have demonstrated their hatred and intent to cause you harm, it's generally a good idea to have some kind of barrier between you and those people.
Remember, demon can be an offensive term. Refer to them as mortally challenged.
This makes fun of the degree to which progressives will use euphemistic language to placate to hostile individuals and groups who probably have no intention of reciprocating the goodwill.
Earth is the melting pot of the universe.
Now, I highly doubt that id Software harbors some kind of racial purist ideology, but they really don't need to in order to be against open borders or to make fun of the melting pot myth. It is entirely possible to acknowledge that a small amount of non-whites have always been part and parcel of American history, and yet still recognize that America was founded primarily as an extension of European peoples and cultures. In reality, the melting pot narrative is a relatively new phenomenon. The First Naturalization Act, passed by the First Congress in 1790, explicitly stated that immigration was open to free white persons of good character. and this set a trend that was maintained in one form or another right up until the 1965 Hart-Celler Act. The very term melting pot only traces back to 1908, when a Jewish immigrant from Russia wrote a play by the same name in which he declared that America was God's crucible, melting down and reforming all the races into one. Now, many Jews actually share this desire for religious reasons, namely that once their Messiah comes, he will unite the world under his leadership from Jerusalem, and it is the job of Jews to prepare the Gentiles for this, which seems to involve breaking down all ethnic, ideological, and national barriers, except for those in Israel.
Access granted.
This alludes to that common thought continuum that the flow of undocumented newcomers is simply too large to impede in any meaningful way, so we should just let them through. And as corporate says to let them through, a giant white alpha male says no. The symbolism here is a little hard to ignore. Now, I want to make something absolutely crystal clear here for anyone who might get the wrong idea. I am not advocating violence against immigrants, legal or otherwise. La verdad es que actualmente yo soy un extranjero viviendo en América Latina. Tengo varios amigos y socios hispanos, pero de todas formas, ellos no son mi gente. Eso me quedó bastante claro cuando un lugareño por acá me dijo que nunca me puedo cambiar el color de la piel. Pero eso no significa que no podemos seguir siendo amigos, ¿cierto? Now, it shouldn't need to be said, but I really don't think id Software was advocating anything sinister either. But I do suspect that they were purposefully drawing parallels in order to tap into the frustration of young white men. Now, maybe that is pandering, but I don't care. This brings me to the reason I wanted to make this video in the first place, which was to comment on the new Doom Eternal trailer within the broader context I just outlined. The trailer has a number of utterances that I think are potentially symbolic and metaphorical in nature. While they may not overtly convey what I am about to ascribe to them, I do believe that if nothing else, the writers are intentionally tapping into a sense of urgency within Western men as our continued existence is increasingly questioned and attacked. Why are you here? What you interfere with now is bigger than you can imagine. If you continue, you will bring down the heavens' wrath. It is written. It is their time to give penance. You are but one man.
They are no longer your people to save.
Now, considering that I am an autistic basement dweller with a dry penis and messy room, I think these lines can act as a proxy for the battle between the New World Order and nationalism. The first few lines suggest that the Doomslayer has found himself entangled in heaven's greater plan for mankind, and that if he continues on his path, those who inhabit heaven will relentlessly attack him. Heaven wants mankind to give penance, which is an act of self-abasement or devotion performed to show sorrow or repentance for sin. It is written likely refers to a sort of prophecy for Armageddon, which is what I assume the Doomslayer wants to stop. You are but one man is supposed to intimidate the Doomslayer and illustrate just how unimportant he is in the grand scheme of things. In other words, you are but one man with no hope of defying the larger forces at work here. They are no longer your people to save is a call to the Doomslayer to betray or give up on his own kind. Now, admittedly, there is some debate over who Doom Guy really is. Some even question whether or not he's actually human. But visually, I would argue that he's still a white male and thus his symbolism remains potent. And to anyone exclaiming that Doom Guy is Jewish because of the mother of B.J. Blazkowicz in the new Colossus, where have I heard that before? Whatever. I would remind you that the Machine Games timeline of Wolfenstein is not canonical. Some people think that the Doomslayer is actually the same character as the Betrayer, a Knight Sentinel from the world of Argent d'Nor, whose son was killed in battle fighting Hell's legions. Deeg Grav, a demon priest, made a deal with him to resurrect his dead son if he would help Grav and his cabal destroy the Knight Sentinels, so that they could absorb Argent d'Nor into Hell and gain access to its resources. Now, my personal rationale for why I don't think the Doomslayer is from Argent d'Nor is because when the ominous voice in the trailer says, "They are no longer your people to save," It can't be referring to anyone from Argentinur because all of the Argentinurians are dead. But one Reddit user made a very interesting observation regarding this topic. Quote, "I'm pretty sure the character of the betrayer exists just to point out that the same thing keeps happening over and over. He was to Argentinur what Olivia is to Mars. You see, hell makes contact with a civilization. They exploit someone there who is weak-willed and lets them in. They run amok, and then someone shows up to sort everything out by driving the aliens out." Oh man, it's a natural cycle, which is why Doomguy is portrayed as a force of nature in the folk tales of the civilization that he happens to. It insinuates that it doesn't matter who Doomguy is. If he weren't Doomguy, then someone else would be, because there's always a Doomguy. Oh, he's playing an archetypical role. Oh, I wish I could talk about what this is really alluding to, but that would get me another strike. Now, even if I suffer from extreme confirmation bias, I would still argue that the guys at id Software know the power of iconography. Even if they don't secretly subscribe to what I've outlined here, surely it would be profitable to exploit these feelings being aroused in young white men at a time when pop culture is effectively villainizing us, when we are being censored left and right, and when we are being told that somehow we don't really exist, yet still owe something for our collective actions in the past. Anyone who can successfully tap into this ethnic frustration without explicitly making a statement would stand to profit quite a bit, even if they didn't believe in any of it. In fact, it might be an extremely intelligent way to implement a pressure release valve for men who, on some deep psychological level, have had enough, even if they don't fully understand why. Whatever the case actually is, and even if I'm entirely wrong, the fact is that Doom is riddled with Western symbolism. Even the Praetor suit itself is a reference to an ancient Roman officer who managed public games and, in the absence of the consuls, doled out justice as he saw fit. The architecture is reminiscent of the Catholic Church's great works, and the imagery of the Knight Sentinels clearly draws inspiration from the Crusaders. And in that regard, Doom has always been very heavy-handed on Baphomet symbolism, which can be traced back to the rivalry between Christianity and Islam. A French crusader in 1098 wrote that their enemies were calling upon Baphomet prior to battle. While Baphomet later became associated almost exclusively with Satan, at the time of the Crusades, Baphomet was a reference to Muhammad. So, in many ways, it really doesn't matter if any particular messaging was intentional on the part of id Software. It's still there, and I say we embrace it.